Hi, Sarah. Thanks so much for joining me today. And my first question is, do you have any traditions for celebrating Independence Day or anything special that you do on this day?
So I think for me, the 4th of July or Independence Day is really, it just equals a backyard barbecue. It's time to spend with family around the grill or the picnic table in the backyard. There's always swimming involved or some kind of water. I grew up in Arizona, so it is really hot in July. So if we had a pool, we would do that, or we would have the sprinklers or the hose on. And as kids, we would spend the whole day in a bathing suit, running around, playing in the water or swimming, and spend the afternoon and the evening eating, hot dogs and hamburgers and corn on the cob and lots of sort of just pretty simple food, but quite delicious and food that I always associate with the 4th of July. One of my favorite parts about being an adult or having my own family with the 4th of July is we lived in Oklahoma, where my husband grew up. And in Oklahoma, you can buy fireworks to let off on the 4th of July. Not legal in every state, but it is in Oklahoma. And it's my kids' very favorite 4th of July tradition is going down to the fireworks stand that pop up all over town at the beginning of July and buying sparklers and snap pops. My kids always wanted to let off much bigger and more powerful fireworks, but they were quite young when we lived there, and I was a little afraid of it. So we let my husband do the let off of the fireworks, or some of the other male adults that had grown up with this tradition. But we would just wait until dark, and the kids would run around with sparklers and take turns making their name, drawing it in the air with a sparkler, and it's sort of down home fun. It's sort of small town fun in a way. For me, there's no requirement on where or how we spend it, just that it's spent sort of together and eating good food and hanging out. Actually, for the past 6 years, we have not been in the United States. Nope, that's wrong. Last year, we're in the United States for the first time in several years in Oklahoma, and my kids got to go back to those fireworks stands, and we got to spend time with our extended family and cousins at the pool, and in the evening, when everybody is exhausted from the sun and the water, relax and watch the fireworks going off in the evening.
Yeah, so actually my next question relates to that. How do you celebrate this day when you're not in the States? Do you also try to do the fireworks or the cooking, or what do you try to do to make sure that you get to enjoy this day?
Rarely do we get to do the fireworks. Oftentimes it's because of different legal requirements in whatever country we are in. So we enjoy the fireworks whenever that country celebrates their special holidays. So we look forward to our 4th of July firework watching. Will happen in late August here in Budapest.
Okay.
And we'll walk into the Danube for that. So my kids don't get their firework fill until a little later. But when we're overseas, we usually incorporate swimming of some kind. We try to incorporate barbecue or grilling food, but we often live in apartments, sometimes without a grill like we are here. So we just incorporate the foods or the feelings that we can when we're overseas. And it's really not any specific piece of tradition that we have to have. It's more about creating a feeling.
Mm-hmm. That sounds very nice. And so you've mentioned some of the dishes you would typically eat on this day. Mm-hmm. What's your favorite?
I think my favorite would have to be corn on the cob. Mm-hmm. My favorite way is to grill it completely encapsulated in the corn husk. I do nothing to it other than throw it directly onto indirect heat on the grill for about 15 minutes. And then once it's cool enough to handle, ripping off the corn husk and eating it. I don't put any salt or butter on it. I think it's just perfect the way it was grown. It's absolutely my favorite dish.
Okay, and what are you gonna make for us today?
in the spirit of my very favorite food, corn on the cob, I'm going to make cornbread. It is made from cornmeal and flour, and it's very simple. It is more of a southern dish, and there is quite an argument in the US over whether or not cornbread is supposed to be sweet. I am not a big fan of cornbread being sweet, so mine doesn't have any sugar in it at all, but a lot of times you'll see recipes for cornbread that have sugar in them, and it's almost a dessert. People will take them out of the oven and it'll have honey and butter on top, and it's delicious, don't get me wrong, but I prefer my cornbread to be a little bit more savory.
So is there some kind of a divide in this debate based on states?
Probably there's a divide based on states. I think the more traditional, I'm going to get this so wrong and people are going to get mad, but I do think the more traditional Southern cornbread is without sugar and sweet and honey, but I could be completely wrong. Like I said, I grew up in Arizona, so we're not really part of the debate at all. I think you see both where I grew up. I just tend to prefer it more of savory. I will often put peppers or jalapenos in my cornbread as well, just to kick up the savory, or maybe some cheese, but I like a savory cornbread.
So today I'm going to make a traditional cornbread recipe, cooked in a skillet, cast iron skillet. And to start, I don't have buttermilk, so I'm going to make it. And I'm going to do that using milk and a little bit of white vinegar. So I need 1 cup of buttermilk. So for that, I'm going to measure out just shy of 1 cup. And then I will add a splash of white vinegar and let it sit, and that will create buttermilk for me. So I'm going to set the buttermilk aside, let it work its magic. And in the meantime, I'm going to mix my dry ingredients. So what I need first is a half a cup of just regular flour. And I'll add that to the bowl. I don't do exact measurements. I kind of treat cooking and baking as an inexact science, and I try to have fun with it as much as I possibly can. So I have half a cup of flour, and I'm going to add 1 cup of cornmeal. And you can use yellow cornmeal, you can use white cornmeal, it doesn't really matter. But this is what is going to give it really great texture, it gives it good color, so you can see I have yellow cornmeal here. So put those two together. To that, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of salt, and I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of baking powder. The baking powder is what gives it sort of the rise, the cakey rise in the oven, and makes it light and fluffy and airy. So I'll give it a quick stir with my fork. Just mix those ingredients together. So my dry ingredients are done, and I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to work on all of the wet ingredients. So I have the buttermilk here, and to that I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of melted butter. I'm going to add 1 egg, and I'm going to add a half a cup of regular milk. Now, I'm going to take this fork, because I dirty another one, and I'm going to stir this all up. And I'm going to incorporate the two, but before I put the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients, I'm going to add the baking soda. And I forgot to get that out, so I'm going to get it out now. 1/2 teaspoon, so just a little bit, and you add that into the wet ingredients just before you incorporate them into the dry. And now what I want to do is slowly pour the wet into the dry and mix it. The most important thing, in my opinion, is not over-mixing it. You don't want it to be too mixed. You want to put it in until it's just barely combined. There's not really any pockets of dry flour or dry cornmeal. And I give it a quick stir, make sure everything is, and I'm done. This helps ensure that it bakes up sort of light and airy, and not too dense and, I don't know, just not very tasty. So that's it. It's a really simple recipe. I was telling Jofi that sometimes I add cheese or I'll add peppers in here if I want to go really sort of spicy or extra savory. I'm just making a traditional cornbread today, but if I wanted to add anything, I would do it now. You can add in some shredded sharp cheese, any sort of vegetable that you might like to make it spicy, sort of a hot pepper or a more mild pepper, but this is the basic recipe and it's really all you need to worry about. So I'm going to take this over to the skillet and I'm going to cook it on the stovetop for 1 minute, and then I'm going to put it into the oven for 450 degrees for 20 minutes, and that's it. It's a really simple recipe, but it's super tasty, very delicious. So as you can see, I have some butter melting in this cast iron skillet. It's about 2 tablespoons of butter. I don't really measure it, but you basically want to have enough to cover the bottom plus a little bit more. It ensures that the cornbread is not going to stick, and it also gives it a really yummy butter flavor. So we're going to pour this in, and we're going to let it cook on the stovetop for about 1 minute, and then I'm going to put it straight into the oven to finish cooking. So once you put the dough in, or the batter in, you don't mess with it. You can see that it's already starting to bubble up around the edges and getting that just yummy buttery crust. So you can see it's been cooking for about 1 minute on the stovetop. We have a good crust and some bubbles around the edges, and now in order to finish it, we're going to stick it into a really hot oven for about 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, we're going to have a delicious cornbread. If you want, you can have honey drizzle on the top, but again, I'm not going to do that because it's that whole sweet versus savory. I would much prefer to have mine with a side of pickled jalapenos or some sort of delicious meat off of the grill, and keep my dessert as dessert. So at the end, you have this delicious, crusty, golden brown cornbread. And you can't hear it through the video, but it is sizzling still a little bit, and it is hot. But we're gonna cut right in. And there you go. Simple, easy cornbread. You can have it with soups or stews or chilies, meats on the grill, or if you want it for dessert, a little bit of honey.